So I'm going through this giant drama with my ex-wife. She is refusing to take any responsibility for our children, and let me tell you, things start to escalate and get worse and worse. Until one day, I get the news of this. Susan was my college girlfriend. We began dating shortly after beginning freshman year. We dated for several years before marriage, and during that period, the relationship went smoothly. We had our differences, but then one golden rule we made was set always iron it out before the next day. We made sure not to sleep without settling our differences. My parents are not wealthy, but I had to make sure my kids would not say the same about their parents. I survived college on scholarship thanks to my role in the football team. After college, I was offered an opportunity to play football for a particular sports association, but it was more for free and I was looking for faster money. I felt not to gamble my life on football. I felt there was more to do than that. My family expected that I'd get married to Susan shortly after college. However, I wasn't going to wed as a poor man. I wanted my wife and children to be comfortable. So, during the years before marriage, I worked tirelessly to make money. I was able to gather some wealth and assets for myself. My real estate business was going quite well. I was known as one of the top real estate agents in town. I didn't want Lisa to stress herself at all. I wanted to make her feel comfortable, and so during our years of dating, got her a shop to start a hairdressing and nail business. But that was what she really wanted. We got married after I was able to gather some possessions, and within some few months, Susan got pregnant with twins. I wanted to make sure that my kids got the best life that could be offered. So after their birth, I started spending some extra hours at work, just to meet with my clients' needs and earn more cash. I got so engrossed in my work that Susan began to complain. One thing I knew was that I was guilty of getting married to my work, but of cheating, that was something else that Susan pinned on me. She began talking about how I probably had another woman outside. That's why I wasn't spending enough time with my family. As the years flew by, arguments with Susan about my work and suspected infidelity became a constant thing. She accused me of having an intimate relationship with my business partner, who was a female. She also talked about how I probably spent more time with my friends and lavished cash on luxuries. The estate management business can't be as engrossing and time-taking as you say it is, was the constant sentence she made each time I said my work was quite demanding. 6 years into our marriage, and it was evident that it was going to collapse quite soon. I began cutting hours off my schedule to spend more time with my family. I took more time getting to know my children, taking them out on trips, and also spending some alone time with my wife. But somehow, my wife's reaction always made me feel like those acts were a cover-up to whatever acts I was doing outside the home. She became so defensive, and this got me really depressed. I began to get distracted from my work. I could hardly concentrate anymore, that I didn't even notice on time when one of my accounts got emptied. It was done anonymously, but then the only other person who knew the details of the account was my wife, Susan. However, I could not exactly accuse her. I somehow let it slip that she was the only one who knew my details, and yet the money in the account vanished anyways. She got defensive once again, laminating on how I was probably accusing her of robbing me. I got guilty and apologized for it. I spent my days like a madman, trying to trace whoever duped me. I admit that I was transferred part of my aggression to Susan. I was going through a lot, but she somehow felt I was being uncaring. She told me to my face that my business should not prevent me from concentrating on the family. One way or the other, I told her that probably the reason I was going through what was happening was because she might have a hand in it. I pleaded with her to let me know if she tampered with the account. I was ready not to get angry over it. The account held more than half of the money tied to my business. She sounded offended that I confronted her, but it only made sense. Susan was the only one who knew about the account. I hardly had any business enemies that might have deemed it fit to dupe me. My business was at stake, but my gut telling me was Susan had something to do with it. I tried to get back to business, however, one afternoon one of my clients called just to tell me that the property sold to him has been legally claimed by someone else. Never in my life have I been accused of dubious acts. Although the loss from my account and my family issues made me lose concentration in my workplace. But as a professional real estate agent, how could I not have noticed that I acquired a house that's been somewhat compromised? The client had paid for the building already, so I had to pay the client back with my own money. It all didn't make sense. I tried for several days to figure out how I was scammed, but the work was flawlessly done. Meanwhile, Susan's defensiveness and naggings were getting so much worse. So I didn't sound much, as a surprise, when she suggested that we got divorced. My heart wasn't exactly with the decision because I didn't want my kids to experience a broken marriage. But for the sakes of sanity, it seemed to be the only option to take. The Susan that I knew in college was different from the one I married. Well, within 2 days, Susan had packed her stuff, left the house, and also took the twins with her. She had already rented an apartment even before the divorce was mentioned. It seemed to me that she's been planning how she would start a new life for a while, and I was in the dark. We began the divorce process, and an issue with custody of the kids arose. Obviously, the court found it best that the kids stayed with Susan because she told them I wasn't always present at home. I agreed and, well, accepted it. But then I had to pay monthly child support, and Susan's salon business was thriving, and she knew that I was having issues with my job, but somehow it didn't seem to bother her much. The monthly child support was a must, she insisted. So, I also informed the court of how I suspect my wife of duping me, but there's just no evidence. My account was anonymously drained. The court would not take my words until it was proven, so I had to keep quiet about it. Shortly after the divorce, my business crumbled. I got so depressed that the bar became my best friend. I drank every day, losing track of time and not paying any attention to what I've got left of my business. My business partner tried to encourage me to get back to the business, but there was absolutely nothing left. She had to partner up with other real estate agents because I was of no use anymore. In no time, a month was up and it was time to pay for child support. I had no cash. I could not meet up, so my wife charged me to court. I told the court that I was going through some financial crisis and that the authorities should be able to understand. However, the court gave me 2 weeks to pay up the child support or else I'd suffer some legal consequences. So I spent the next week trying to revive my business and get back onto the field. But at the end of the time frame, I still had nothing. In a bid to pay up, I decided to loan some cash only to find out that I've been restricted from doing so. The authorities had informed banks not to lend me any money because of my irresponsibility towards my children and ex-wife. I've been restricted from several social services, which only made things way harder on me. 3 months later, my wife filed another case against me that I haven't been able to pay up for child support. My business reputation was already at stake. My license was going to be taken away from me if I did not prove to be responsible. So, for the next few months, I sold everything I could just to get some cash. I also got involved in an online business because my real estate career was at stake. After several months, I was able to boast some amounts and a stable online business. I decided to stop real estate because I could not cope with its burden anymore. I began paying child support, including balancing up the previous months. I kept doing this consistently and also tried reaching out to my children. I confronted Susan on how important it is that the kids have a father, even if it was just once a month. However, she insisted that I could see them once every 2 months. I did send gifts to them from time to time and also little notes, talked about how much I loved them and missed them. Several months passed and it became much harder to see the twins. Susan seemed to be quite non-responsive. Most of the time, she would not pick my calls up unless it was for time for the child support. One evening, I went over to their apartment, but no one was there. It was a school week, and the kids should have been back from school and been at home, but they weren't. I went over to Susan's salon only to notice it's been closed down. It seemed like she's not been in business for several weeks now, maybe even months. I called Susan's phone several times until she finally picked up. I asked about the kids, and then she told me that they were with one of the friends. She traveled out of town just for some days, so her friend was taking care of them and driving them down to school. I got furious. Why did she not inform me? Why couldn't the children stay with me when she traveled? A few days later, Michelle, one of my kids, called just to tell me that she misses me and would love to stay with me. She said she would rather live with me than Mom. I asked about her mother, and she said that she's not been around for a while, and that they've been staying at one of her mom's friend's place for almost a month. Susan lied to me about traveling just for a few days. She's been away from the children for almost a month. I called Susan and told her the kids wanted to stay with me, but she said that won't happen. Within the next few weeks, I involved the court in the matter, including confirming from Susan's friend that the kids have hardly had their mother's attention for months on end. I told the court that I had a stable online business, and so I was more of a stay-at-home individual. They did ask to prove it, which I provided. I was also applying for a coach position at the local high school in town, and that this is more of a bonus for me and the children. The court accepted, and I finally claimed full custody of the kids. Everything went smoothly, but then I noticed the first month went by, and there was hardly any phone calls from Susan asking about the kids, or that she didn't even discuss how she would still contribute to the kids' well-being. I decided to charge Susan for lack of child support. She did not give me a break, and while the kids were in her custody, I should be doing the same too. I told Susan about how she had to be paying child support, and she told me that she did not need to do that, because I was a man. I asked her about her contributions, and she could not give me an answer. So I took this to court, but there were no promises of legal consequences if she did not pay the support. In fact, it seemed the court was more on her side. Somehow, men suffered more legal consequences than women. My friends urged me to let the issue go, but I just simply would not listen. It wasn't that I couldn't take care of the kids on my own, but when the case was reversed, Susan got in the defensive talking about how I wasn't financially stable. That's why I found the need to ask for child support. She talked about how I've hardly been a responsible man for a very long time, and it was only a matter of minutes or days before the kids returned back to her. I decided to let the child support issue go. It didn't seem to be worth it anymore. The court did not favor me much on the case. One afternoon, my former business partner called just to say that the house my client accused me of illegally giving him has been claimed back by the state. Also, one of the people supposedly linked to the activities was a childhood friend of Susan's. Of course. I didn't want to pin this down on Susan anymore, but somehow my guts just kept telling me she had something to do with it. I pursued the case until I finally found out that Susan and the childhood friend have been involved in some real estate issues. This made me reopen the case with my drained bank account. I finally got in touch with a friend who was an expert in uncovering hackers. After about 2 weeks, my friend was able to trace the culprit. It all led back to Susan. The court got involved in this case, and she promised to pay back. I didn't exactly believe that. In fact, I wasn't really interested in her paying me back anyways anymore, because my online business was flourishing. It just bothered me how things could have turned out the way it did between Susan and I. Even if she paid back the amount stolen from my account, the state was already involved with the case of the house property that was fraudulently claimed by Susan. I was a bit confused. Our marriage wasn't so smooth, but if I hadn't lost the money or the property, probably we wouldn't have gotten a divorce. When I asked Susan why she sabotaged the marriage, She boldly claimed that she suspected me of cheating and that sooner or later I was going to abandon her with the kids. She said she tried to beat me to it, that she simply did not trust me anymore. Guys, the last 11 years of my life has been dedicated to my family. Every single thing I've done was in my family's name. My obsession with my work just to make sure that Susan and the children were comfortable were being questioned by my ex-wife. She gaslighted me on several occasions, and even if I wanted to forgive her, the state already had hands on the issue. Susan was to be sentenced to prison. 2 years, after which she would still refund my money back. The kids remained in my custody after that, and once in a while, I would take them just to see their mother in jail. Somehow, even when I knew that all I did was for the family, I felt guilty. I believed if I had focused less on work, then probably my ex might not have suspected me of cheating. I do wonder what would happen after 2 years. Susan might be restricted from seeing the children or spending time with them. I never planned to be a single dad, but sometimes life just throws a big bump of surprises at ya. I don't know, guys. The fact that OP's ex-wife just left the children hanging around for apparently months with one of her friends who we didn't even know if they're being taken care of properly. Also, she can just travel around the world. This person seemed like a toxic person. And let me just say the ending seems pretty fitting that she lands herself behind the slammer. Let me know how you thought about this story. Drop your comments down below, how you relate to it, similar situations, or what you would do if you were in OP's position. And we'll turn our attention to story number 2 and the final story of the day. Am I the a-hole for telling my niece my husband and I are not going to her birthday? Why? My husband isn't welcome. I've been with my husband for 10 years. We've been married for 5 of those years. He suffered horrific trauma at the hands of his father. His parents were married and expecting twins when his mom suffered some kind of hemorrhage, and she ended up with eclampsia. My husband's mom and twin sister did not make it, but my husband did after a period of time in the NICU. His dad told him it was his fault they died. He had grandparents who meant the world to him and tried to shield him from his dad's anger, but when he was 8 years old, they died also. His father then blamed him. He spent the next 10 years hearing day after day that he was the reason. At no point did he have another person to reassure him it wasn't the case. When we met, he had just started to heal. He was away from his dad and attended therapy. It was a very big fear of his that what his dad said was true. He's a wonderful man, and my nieces and nephews adore him. He was always good with them and the rest of the family. In January 2020, I was pregnant, and we went for a scan where I learned I miscarried. As soon as my husband heard this, something inside him broke. He started to unravel. He was in the middle of a mental health crisis. He was doing this weird manic laugh that was also a sob. He ran out of the room, and I followed after him, very concerned. My mom and sister both work at the hospital. The sister's a nurse, while mom worked in a little gift store. They both saw him in his worst moment. They saw as medical personnel were forced to intervene because he was in the middle of a breakdown, hysterical and totally out of it. He was totally broken, and nothing could reach him. It was the scariest moment of my life. The worst moment of his. And they judged him for laughing. Then when they told the rest of the adults in my family, they also judged him. All of my family were aware of his history, and he told them about it years ago. My husband ended up under the care of a psychiatrist, who suggested he needed a lot more help than therapy could provide. Instead of understanding, my family no longer wanted him around. They said a man who could laugh at his own wife's miscarriage was not the kind of man they wanted around children. I told them I would not leave him behind. My niece is turning 12 this year and is having her big party since COVID. She called and said she wanted us there, but she had not seen us on her mom's list. I told her we would not be able to come and that I was sorry that we both were. She was upset, asked why she never gets to see us anymore. Why we could not come to her birthday party, why we missed them all now. So I told her. I told her that my husband was not welcome by other adults in the family anymore, and she apparently yelled at her parents and mine. Then I got crap from it, from them not telling her what I did. They said I had no business saying that, so am I the a-hole? Okay, so here's the overwhelming comment. Not the a-hole, I respect you for standing with your husband. That was the right move. If they won't welcome both of you, then neither of you attend. As far as telling your niece the truth, I agree with that too. You have nothing to hide. There was nothing inappropriate about revealing this to her, and it sounds like you kept the explanation short. OP says then, replying to the comment, I did. I told her none of what happened. Just that he was no longer welcome. Guys, let me know what you would do in this unique situation. Drop your opinions down below and tell me, what exactly would you do if your husband's no longer allowed to come anymore? Drop your thoughts, guys. That's all the videos I have for you today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.